All right, good morning, New Point Church. How you guys doing? Guys doing good? For those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Wes. I'm one of the teaching pastors here, and I just want to say, man, I'm excited for you guys to be here. I believe something powerful happens when we come here together. We come here as a family that are like, we're ready for something from God. We're ready to learn about a God that loves us and pursued us and died for us. I think something powerful happens when we come together. So I'm excited for this morning. I appreciate Brett's prayers because they're so true. Like we did this all-nighter, and I had way too much Red Bull and way too little of water and not enough food and way too much energy to coincide with not enough food and not enough water. And I'm wiped like physically, right? Like my voice is gone, my body is gone. But I'll tell you what, my spirit is excited this morning. Because even in just like the last few weeks, everything from like my life group to the youth to adults, like I've seen God be doing some amazing things recently. And so as a result, like my body doesn't want to move very much and my voice might break out, it might crack. I don't know. I hope my voice lasts, but my spirit is excited this morning. Are you guys excited this morning? Come on, you guys got out of bed for a reason this morning, right? Like otherwise, why'd you come here? What was the reason for getting out of bed? Like surely you must have expected to meet God today. Surely you must have expected to learn something about a God that loves you and pursues you. So I hope that you guys are excited with me. Is that cool? You guys pumped? All right, so we've been going through this Daniel series. And Jordan opened it up, did the first week. He took my intro spot. I was like, man, I thought I was like the intro guy. I feel like I always introduce series. But he took chapter 1, and he did a great job of opening that up and bringing some context to that and showing what that looked like. And Brett did chapter 2 when you start to get into these dreams. And I think as you go, like Daniel gets a little bit crazier and crazier. But ultimately, what is Daniel like a story of? What is this book really about? It's really a collection of stories of people that are living as exiles. They're living in a land that is foreign to them, right? They go there as Hebrews, they go there as God-fearing men and women, and they are living in a land that is opposed to their faith. They're living in a culture that wants to oppress their faith. And so they end up in this weird kind of tension state, right? How do I live with those around me? How do I continue to love them and to serve them while continuing to live out my faith? While continuing to not back down, but continuing to speak out for a God that loved me and loves them. And so I think for us, this is very relevant for us, right? I think in many ways we experience that story, don't we? I mean, Paul talks about this in several of his letters, this idea that we are really aliens to this land, that we are foreigners here, that in many ways we are exiles too, that we live in a land that attempts to oppress our faith. We live in a culture that is opposed to our faith. And in chapter 3, we find one of the first real instances where they have these choices to make. And you see these throughout the book of Daniel, but this is one of the first ones where they really have this choice to make. Are they going to stay devoted to their God, or are they going to give into the culture? And so let's go ahead and turn to chapter 3. If you guys have your Bible, turn there. If you have an app on your phone, pull it up. If you don't have either one of those, we'll have it on the screen. But let's just start in verse chapter 1. And so I hope you guys are prepared because we're going to go through, I'm not going to lie, we're going to go through the entire chapter. We're going to get it done. I don't know how we're going to get it done. What time is it? 10:50? We're going to get it done, though. All right, you guys ready? Verse 1. So King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth was 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justice, the magistrates, and all the officials of the province to come to the dedication of this image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the officials of all the land gathered together for this dedication of the image of the King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and the herald proclaimed, listen to this, and the herald proclaimed out loud, "You are commanded, O people of all languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, you hear the sound of the pipe, you hear the sound of the lyre, the tigrin, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of a music you can imagine, you are to fall down and you are to worship this golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up, and whoever does not fall down and worship immediately will be cast into a burning furnace. So this like escalates quickly, right? So if you imagine these people, so here he comes and he brings this image. It's probably most likely the main Babylonian god, which would have been Marduk. And he makes this golden image of him that's somewhere around 90 feet tall and 90 feet wide. It's pretty massive. And he sets up this god, and Marduk was their god of almost everything. So he's like their god of vegetation, of fertility, of water, of magic, which is their version of miracles in a way, right? So he is the God that provides everything for them, so they believe, right? So he sets up this image, and in many ways, it's also, are you loyal to the king, right? Are you gonna follow his decree? Are you gonna follow his commands? So he brings this image before them. He brings all of the musicians in the land around it, and he says, when they begin to play, you're gonna bow down to this God. And if you don't, I'm gonna throw you in the furnace. I'm gonna kill you. And the reality is, for these people, this is a very real thing. If you turn to Jeremiah 29, just a few books before this, Jeremiah 29 gives kind of an interesting insight into this because you see that his words are true. So let's see, verses 22. And it says this, because of them, this curse shall be used by all the exiles from Judah and Babylon. The Lord will make you like Zedekiah and Ab, whom the king of Babylon roasted in the fire. So you immediately know, he's not joking around. He's going to roast you. This is what he's going to do. If you don't follow what he says, he's going to throw you in the furnace. And so imagine you're one of these exiles. You're one of these Hebrew people that the Babylonians have come in and they've destroyed your city. They've destroyed your temple. They've mocked your God. They've transported you all the way over here as captives, as exiles. And here you stand before this image. What's your choice? It's a tough choice, right? Do I bow down or do I die? It's not a choice we have to make every day in America, right? Do I bow down or do I die? In verse 7 it says this, therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, every kind of music, all the people of all the nations and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So what happens? They have to choose their life or their God. And when they find out they're going to be thrown in the furnace, what's their response? They immediately bow down. They're like, no way, not going to mess with that. They immediately bow down, except, continue in verse 8, therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans had come forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared, O King Nebuchadnezzar, O King, live forever. You, O King, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down, and they shall worship this golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning furnace. Therefore, there are certain Jews who you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, they pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods, and they do not worship the golden image that you have set up. Oh, yeah. So now you have these three Jews out of the sea of people, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that said, we are not going to bow down. We don't care if it costs us our lives. We don't care what that looks like. We know who the true God is. We serve the true God, and I am not willing to bow to this idol. Would you be willing to do the same? When you heard that music, would you instantly be like, man, it's not worth my life. I'll ask forgiveness later. They don't. They say, we're going to stand up for this. And it continues like this. And even that line is so great. Pay no attention to you, and they do not serve your gods. They pay no attention to your gods. They don't care what you say. They're not going to bow. And in verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought to him. This is bad. This is not the position you want to be in if you're them. So they bring these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound, when you hear the horn, you hear the pipe, you hear the lyre, you hear the trigon, you hear all this different music, fall down and worship the image that I have made, and all will be well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into the burning furnace. And who is the God that will deliver you from my hands?" So Nebuchadnezzar brings them here, right? And what's he essentially do? He gives them one more chance, right? You can tell he has some sort of affinity for them. He likes them in some way. He says, "I'm going to give you one more chance." Maybe your ears went out. Maybe you're deaf. I don't know. I'm going to give you one more chance. And when you hear this music, you better bow down, because if you don't, I'm going to throw you in the furnace. Your life will be over. And I remember I read this verse several times, and at first reading, I think that's how it comes off. I think it comes off that he's giving them a second chance. But the more I read it, I'm not convinced that's what's happening. I think he's trying to humiliate their God. I think he's trying to humiliate them. Because what does he say? What's this last line? He says, "But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into the burning fiery furnace. And who is this God that can possibly deliver you from my hand?" He elevates himself above their God. He says, when you're in my grip, I can do with you what you want. Your God can't save you. He's challenging them. He's daring them. What God can possibly save you in this moment? I'm going to throw you in a fire. You're going to be consumed up. You're going to be nothing but bones in just a couple of minutes. What God can save you from that? He's in no way trying to give them a second chance. He's trying to humiliate them. He's bringing them in front of all these people and trying to show them this is how weak your God really is. You better back down right now. You can feel the tension rising amongst the king, right? He must be getting angrier and angrier. And this is how they answer. In verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter." It's like some brave words, man. He brings them before him and says, if you don't do what I say, I will kill you. And it won't be a fun death. It's going to be a miserable death. I'm going to kill you. What God can possibly save you? And their response is, we don't even have to answer to you in this matter. It's like they're saying, we only answer to our God. We don't answer to your gods. We don't answer to you, king. We answer to our God. And says this, if this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. Think about that. So they immediately switch it around on him, right? He says, who can possibly pull you from my hand? I'm going to crush you. And they say, no, our God, who we serve, he will deliver us straight out of your hand. We don't even need to answer to you on this. And then they say this. They say, but if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will still not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And so for me, this is very interesting because right here you see the faith of these young men. They've never seen God deliver them out of a furnace before, right? This isn't like an experience they've had before, but something in them, some sort of faith in them says, if you put us in there, my God's going to deliver us. And so my question for you is very simple. Even as we listen to that song during offering, do you believe that we serve the God of miracles? Is that real for your life? Do you actually live that way? Because these guys, they're willing to put it all on the line. It's not a cool note that they write down in life group. It's not something that they put on their Facebook, but it's something that if they're wrong, they're going to die. They put it all on the line to believe in a God that will save them, to believe in a God that will deliver them, to believe in a God that will bring a miracle to them. Do we live that way? Is our first instinct that God will provide a miracle when it doesn't make sense? And it's not one that we've seen before. It's not one that we've experienced before, but somehow we believe it's going to happen. And then they take it a step further. Listen to this last line in there. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will still not serve your gods or worship the golden image. Did you pick up on that? So what do they say? They say, our God will provide a miracle. Our God is going to deliver you. You will not make our God look like a fool. Our God will deliver us. He will bring a miracle. But if he does not bring a miracle, I'm still going to worship him. I'm still going to serve him. I'm still not going to bow down to your gods. And I think a lot of us in here will say, hey, when that miracle comes, man, I will believe in God. I will give him my life. I will serve him. I will serve him faithfully. I will call him the God of miracles. But what about when the miracle doesn't come? Is your faith still there? Because that's them from the very beginning, right? They don't really totally know what's going to happen. They're trusting God for something to happen. They're believing that God's going to deliver it. They're calling that out in faith, but they don't totally know. And they say, even if it doesn't, I will serve this God, and I will love this God, and I will not bow down to your gods. I will not serve them because I serve the true God. Regardless of the outcome of this situation, I know the true God. And I think that's the point that a lot of us struggle in. So when the miracle doesn't come, or it doesn't come the way that we thought it would, or it doesn't show the way that we thought it would, or it doesn't come in the time that we thought it would, and immediately we start to back down. We're like, man, maybe the golden image isn't that bad. Maybe I should bow down to that. Maybe I should call it a day. And that's not what these guys do. These guys are willing to stand up for their God. They're willing to speak out for their God. And I wonder, would we do the same? We just did this Man Up event this weekend where we had all these junior high guys and all these high school guys. We stayed up all night. We played all kinds of games and all kinds of things. But we also did plenty of messages and worship in there. And our theme there in this Man Up was Speak Out. And so I did the very last message, and my challenge to them was you guys, as young men, you have influence in which way your generation's going to go and how it's going to roll. You have influence there. And the way you live and the choices that you make and how you lead. And so I said, I challenge you guys to speak out in your generation. When you see injustices, to speak out. When you see people come against your God, to speak out, to be willing to stand up. And you know what it's going to cost you. There's going to be a sacrifice there probably. It's not going to be easy, but are you willing to do it? That was my challenge to them. And really, I have the same challenge for you guys. When this kind of stuff happens, are you still willing to speak out? Are you willing to call out miracles and deliverance? Are you willing to call out reconciliation and recovery? And then when it doesn't happen, are you still going to serve our God? Where do you stand on that? Where's your faith on that? I don't want us to even think about, think about you being in this situation, right? Close your eyes even if you have to. Imagine you are there, you are in Babylon, and here's this giant image before you, this 90-foot golden image, and you can see all the musicians around it. You can see a vast sea of people in front of it, and you know when this music plays that you are called to bow down before it. Standing to the side of you is one of the most powerful kings around. He says he's going to throw you in the furnace if you don't. What do you do as an exile in that land? Do you keep your devotion to God, or do you bend to the culture and the rules that they've called you to follow? And I think many of us, if we're imagining that scenario, we think, you know what, no, I would not bow down. I would be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I would have some faith there. I would have some courage there. I would not be the one to back down. I would not be the one to bow down. I would be the one to speak out. And in a sad way, it makes me chuckle. Because it's not true. It's not true for most of us. The reality is we may not have a 90-foot image in front of us, but our culture places idols in front of us every single day that we choose to bow down to. Every single day, a lot of us in here, we get up and we bow down to the idol of our career. And we want to advance, and we want to have more money, and we want to do things, we want to have the prestige. And every single morning, whether we want to admit it or not, we get up and we bow down to that idol. Many of us, we get up every morning and we bow down to the idol of our anger. We want to hold on to it. It's not something we're willing to let go. It's something that pushes us through life, and we know that we should do it different. We know we should love people. We know we should serve people, but we're not willing to give up that idol, and we bow down to it. Many of us in here, we get up every morning and we bow down to the idol of unforgiveness and bitterness. And things have happened in our lives and they motivate us and they push us and we're not willing to let it go. We have to hold on to it. We have to worship that idol. We get up and we worship the idol of money. And we think if I just have enough money, I'll have hope, I'll have security, I'll have love, I'll have prestige. I need to acquire more. I need to have more. And we get up and we bow to the idol of money. We get up and we bow to the idol of music and movies, and we want to watch what we want to watch, and we want to listen to what we want to listen to, and who cares if it's right or wrong? It's our choice, and we bow down to that idol. We get up and we bow down to the idol of sexuality. Some of us were married, and we bow down to the idol of pornography. Some of us were single, and we bow down to the idol of pornography or sex, and we think this is what will make us full. This is what will satisfy us. This is the God that will truly make a difference in our lives, and we bow down to that idol. And I think we look at a story like that, and we say, no, we would not bow down. But the reality is we do it every day. It got real quiet in here. We wake up every day and we bow down to these idols. And I challenged these men this weekend, and I said, and I read this story and I go, look, this is three young men. This is three young men that are willing to take a stand. Are we willing to take a stand? Because it's never too late to stop now, to start worshiping the one true God, to put our faith and our hope and our love and our peace in Him, and not try to find it in other things, not try and find it in other idols, but place it in God. And so this is exactly what they do, and it continues in verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face has changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So you imagine that. You imagine he's kind of mocking them. He's trying to give them a second chance, whatever. Kind of toying with them. And they say this, and what happens? The expression on his face changes. He's furious. He says this, he ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. It's a stinking furnace. It's like he's just trying to make this wacky point of like, how much fire can you get out of this thing? Which I would already be nervous at. I'm a ginger. I don't even like to go out in the daytime. So I can't, even being near this furnace, I'd be getting nervous. He heats it 7 times more than it usually is, and he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, in their tunics, in their hats, and in their garments. Like they weren't even, they just like took them as they were and just like wrapped them up like they're done. And because the king's order was urgent and the furnace was overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So here you have some of the strongest guys in his army, some of the toughest guys in his army. And this fire is so hot that when they go to carry them up and throw them in, it kills them. And the 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the burning fiery furnace. I feel like this would be a point in your life where you're like, maybe I made a mistake, right? Like this is not probably how they had it planned. Even when they said their God was going to deliver them, like I almost feel like in their mind they're thinking when those ropes came out, like somehow they weren't going to tie or something like that. Like, and here they are, they're being carried up to the furnace. They can feel the flames. They feel the men that are carrying them collapse on the ground, and then they fall into the furnace. It's a bad moment in your life, probably. And they fell into the burning fiery furnace. But then listen to this. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" And they answered him and said, "True, O king." And he said to them, "But I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the midst of the fire. They are not burned, and the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods." You imagine if you're King Nebuchadnezzar in this moment. He sees his men get killed just trying to place them in it so hot. And he looks in this furnace, and what is he expecting? He's expecting to see bodies on the ground being consumed, being burnt up. Maybe there's only bones left at this point because there's so much flame. And he looks, and he sees them unbound, walking around completely uninjured. If you're King Nebuchadnezzar at this moment, you're in freak-out mode. All of a sudden, it just switched. Maybe all of a sudden, he's like, maybe I made a mistake here. He sees a fourth one that looks like the Son of God. Many scholars believe that this is Jesus himself walking around in there. A few scholars also think it was an angel, but either way, this means in what should have been the worst moment of their life, the very end when they're about to die this horrible death, Jesus is in the midst of it with them. God is in the midst of it with them. Man, some of us, that's something we need to hold on to. That we can be going through something that we think this is the end for us, right? This is the worst that can possibly get. I can't imagine my life tumbling any more than this moment. And Jesus is in the midst of it with you. It says they're completely uninjured. And it continues and says this. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door. I imagine so. He's probably freaking out. And he declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God. Somebody's tune changed just a little bit. Which I can get, right? I mean, he's saying, I am stronger than your God. I'm going to crush you. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to place you in this furnace. He throws them in the furnace. They're completely fine. They're completely good. This is probably his moment where he's like, I was wrong. Everybody makes mistakes. Don't hold it against me. King, our servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out from the fire. Man, come on. Can you imagine this scene? Imagine like being one of the people in the scene. You're just kind of watching this whole thing unfold, right? And you hear the thing about worshiping and bowing down. You're going to be cast in the furnace. You're like, okay, bow down. And then you hear about these three guys that didn't. And you're like, oh, snap. They're about to get it. This is going to be a show. And you watch them throw them in the furnace. Everything's good. They're fine. You're like, what in the world is happening? You see these three guys walk out. I imagine that moment, your world's getting a little jacked up. You don't understand what is possibly happening here. These three men come out of the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the king's council gathered together and saw that the fire had no power over their bodies. The hair of their heads was not singed, their coats were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. So think about this. Here comes all of his counselors, all of his governors, all of his magistrates, and they want to examine these guys after this because this makes no sense, right? And imagine what it must have been like when they get closer and they realize their cloaks aren't burned. They get closer and they realize their hairs aren't even burned on the top of their heads. They don't even smell like smoke. Man, if God was ever trying to make a miracle really obvious, it was in this moment. He's trying to say, I didn't just save them, but it was like they were never in the fire. What do you got now, King Nebuchadnezzar? What a miracle, right? It's a complete and total miracle. And I think about this, and I think, do we believe in this God? Do we believe in these kind of miracles? Or like that opening video just said, is it just like a story to us? Is it just a Bible story that we heard? We watched the VeggieTales of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Or is it something that's real for our lives? Something that this is the God that we serve. Do we believe that he is the God of miracles? Or if we put God in a box of what we feel comfortable with, what makes sense for us, of what's not too weird or not too out there, but something that's comfortable. Do we? We went to LA a few weeks ago. all the pastors went to Azusa, and it's funny how things work. So I feel like, man, God jacked me up on that trip. And it's funny because I feel like I use that phrase a lot. Like, don't you put God in the box, especially the teenagers. They can all attest that I probably use that phrase a lot. Don't you put God in a box. Don't you try to say what he can or can't do. And I went to this event and I realized not only did I put God in a box, but I watched him explode my box. And so I went to this event and I don't know how can I be truthful with you guys? Is that cool? Don't use it against me later. So just to be truthful, out of the staff of us, out of me and Jordan and Brett, I would say they were probably a lot more excited to go than I was. This is so Azusa was a revival that took place in the early 1900s, 100 some years ago. And so now they're proclaiming a new revival because one of the prophecies from that time was when in 100 years that the next generation would have a bigger revival than they did. And this revival was huge. The Foursquare Church came out of it, Berean came out of it, all kinds of crazy things happened out of this revival. But it's very evangelical and charismatic, and it's a little bit outside my wheelhouse because it's very that was a funny pun, wasn't it? It's a little bit outside my weird house. Because it's just very, very spiritual, and out of the three pastors, I'm the more rational and logical one, and I want to study and have context for everything. And some of that stuff doesn't always make sense for me, and so I tend to bend towards the logic a lot of times, I think. And so, but Brett and Jordan are very excited for this, right? I'm yeah, this is gonna be cool, this is gonna be great. And we go to this event, and so you got to imagine there was 80,000, something like that were there. So there's about 80,000 people that are going to this event. So if you can imagine, California is now overrun with evangelical Christians. And so everywhere we go, we're seeing people lay hands on people and pray, and it's kind of a crazy experience. And at one point, we're going down LA Hollywood, and we see this guy in a wheelchair. And we see this group of people around him, and they're praying for healing, they're praying that he gets up and he walks away, and they're praying for things over his life, and we stand and we watch for a second, and then they're done, and he rolls away. And I remember Brett and Jordan are pretty pumped. They're man, that was awesome to see. And I'm how so? I don't get it. There wasn't a healing that took place. I imagine if I'm that guy and I'm thinking, man, these Christians are praying for me. Maybe there's a possibility that a miracle happens. Maybe there really is, and then it doesn't. That would devastate me. So I remember being I feel man, if God shows up, there has to be this dramatic change, right? Something crazy has to happen. That life cannot be the same. And I remember Brett saying something well, maybe they were showing more compassion than people have in a long time. They're showing him a lot more love, and they're serving him in ways that people haven't. And I was yeah, that's well and good, but he's still in a wheelchair. Right? I'm just being truthful. These are things that I struggle with, right? I just don't get it. We walk a little bit farther. There's another guy in a wheelchair. I kind of remember what he looked like because he had these kind of really short legs. And so I happen to remember him and his outfit. We get back to the hotel, and Jordan's still on Azusa high, He's all pumped up, and he's oh, some of my friends are here. And I'm they're on Facebook, and they prayed for this guy, and he got out of a wheelchair and walked. And I'm that's great. He's watch the video. And I'm that's all right. He's no, watch the video, because I know Jordan, and I know if you start watching healing videos with him, it's going to go all night. And so I'm all right, I'll watch the video. This isn't another Todd White video, is it, Jordan? And so, I watched the video, and I kid you not, it's the guy that I walked past right after that. And he got out of a wheelchair, and he walked. And I'm okay, God, all right. And we go to Azusa, and I don't know how to describe this event other than, maybe there's not even words to describe it. It was pretty mind-blowing, right? And we watched people get out of wheelchairs. We watched a ton of healings, even in the midst of ourselves. We watched prophecies that I in my head, I'm trying to make it logical, but I know that it's a God thing. And I watched my mind explode, because what I realized is I had put God in a box. I'd put God in a box of what I was comfortable with. Now, don't hear me wrong. I believe that we serve a God that does miracles. I believe that we serve a God that does healings. But I also believe that we live in a world that has been taken advantage of and that has been manipulated and it's been faked. And so I walk in with some of those experiences, right? I walk in with some of those expectations. And this Lou Engle guy is talking, and Brett used it a couple weeks ago, but he said something that, like, it hit me to the core, because I remember I'm, like, looking at Brett, I'm like, write it down. And he looks out, and here's 80,000 people, right? But I feel like he's talking to me. He says, we have this thing that we do where we lower the power of scriptures to meet our experiences. And really, we should be raising our expectations to the things that Jesus said was possible. And I'm like, whoa, okay. That's hard. And I realized in that moment, I lowered the expectations that I had of God to meet my past experiences. Because I'd seen people get burned, and I'd seen people get hurt, and I'd seen it not work out the way that it was supposed to. And so I lowered my expectations. I didn't go to the level of what Jesus said was possible. I lowered it to my experiences. I wanted to do what made it comfortable for me. And I think we look at this book of Daniel, and I think we read the things that are happening. We read these crazy dreams that are interpreted and have all kinds of meanings. We have guys that are going into the fire, not getting burned, and guys are getting thrown into dens and not getting eaten alive by the lions. And for many of us, we contextualize this, and we make it a story. We make it something that makes sense for us, that it was really good in that time period at that time, but I'm not sure if I serve the same God that does the same things today. And we lower our expectations to meet our past experiences. And the crazy thing about this story is if these three young men had lowered their expectations of God to meet their past experiences, they would have either bowed to the idol or they would have been dead. They'd never seen God throw someone get thrown in a furnace and God deliver them before. They hadn't got a chance to see that. They'd never been thrown in a furnace. They're like, oh, it happened before. God saved me before. He'll save me again. Oh, he saved my buddy the last time that happened, so he'll save me. They had no experience of that, but they raised their expectations to a God that said, I will do anything for you, that anything is possible, and they believed it. And so I challenge you guys as we sit here today, what expectations do we have of God? Are we just lowering them to past experiences, or are we raising them to believe that God's going to do amazing things? Because I think the reality is when we look at the idols in our lives, this is why we bow down to them. Because we don't have high expectations for God. We don't believe he's the one that can really save us. We don't believe that he's the one that can really heal us. We don't believe that he's the one that can really bring happiness or peace or joy to us. We believe that there's other things that can do that. We believe it's the money that can do that. We believe it's the sex that can do that. We believe it's the alcohol that can do that. We believe it's the anger that can do that. It's these other things that we'll bow down to because we believe that that fulfills us more than God, because we've lowered our expectations of God in our lives. And so I wonder, as a people, if we raise our expectations, not things that we've seen before, but we believe in a God that can do amazing things. We believe in a God that can do beautiful things. We believe in a God that can restore and redeem and deliver. I'm telling you what, we'll see our boxes explode. And we'll see a God show up that we didn't even have any precedent for. We didn't have any experiences to make this line up, but here he is doing things that we can't imagine, but we just simply put our faith in him, and here he is delivering and restoring and redeeming our city. What expectations do we have on God? And this is how this story ends. In verse 28, and Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him and set aside the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own." These guys put it all on the line. They raise their expectations of what happens. They change the heart of a king. They change the heart of a people. They change the culture around them because of the faith that they had. Later in the next verse he says that no one could possibly rescue you like anyone else. Only your God could rescue you like that. There's no other God that could rescue you in that kind of way. And I wonder, man, if we believe that, if we stand up, I think we will change the hearts of those around us. There'll be times that we'll have to put it all on the line and we're at the furnace and we have to make a choice. Maybe God doesn't even come through, right? Just like they said. Who are we going to serve? Who are we going to trust? But I believe if we put our faith in God, if we put our trust in God, if we bow down to Him instead of our idols, I believe that He will change the hearts of those around us. He will change the hearts of kings. He will change the hearts of our presidents, of our governors, of our congressmen, of our senators. He will change the hearts of the culture around us. He will change the hearts of our city, of our family, of our country, of our generations. But we have to be willing to step up to the fire. We have to be willing to put it all on the line. We have to be willing to not lower our expectations of God to meet our past experiences, but to raise them to what He said was possible. I challenge you guys to do that. I challenge you guys to be those people and to live that out. Let's pray. God, we are just, we're so excited to be here. We're so amazed to be here. We're so amazed that we get to sit in your presence. That, God, we get to learn about a God that loves us so much. About a God that pursues us, a God that died for us just so we could be reconciled, a God that is willing to go through the toughest moments of our life with us, the God of miracles, the God that does things that we can't explain. God, let us be a people that walk in that kind of faith, and God, as a result, let our culture see that. God, let us go through those hard moments so we can take a stand, so that we can speak out. And God, when we do, God, we pray for the hearts of those around us. God, we pray that hearts are changed in this city as a course of what we've done. God, we pray that people see real faith through us. They see what it looks to really live it out, to not have all these other idols, but to truly bow down to the one and only God. So God, we give our hearts over to you. We give our lives over to you. We give our careers. We give our ambitions. We give our dreams. We give it all to you because we know that you can do far more with it than we ever could. And so God, right now as a people, we surrender to you. And God, I pray as a result that this city is changed. God, we love you so much. In your name, amen.